All right, so the next couple of groups of protists that we're going to look at all have pseudopodia. Remember when we talked about phagocytosis in cells far earlier in the year? Um, we mentioned that the extensions that come out of the cell are called pseudopodia, which means false feet. So there's a couple different groups of these organisms that produce these extensions. The first one, the cercozoans, have very thin, like pseudopodia, um, and so that's why what separates them from the other groups that have pseudopodia that we're going to see in the next slide that have more lobe-shaped, wide pseudopodia formations. So the foraminiferans, or as you can say, forams, what makes them special is that they are porous shelled and they're made out of calcium carbonate, or at least their exterior is. So that's what you're looking at down here. This is a foram. These are important because calcium carbonate is chalk, and so it's an important industrial rock. And you may have also seen this before in the Cliffs of Dover, if you've ever read about them in a book or ever seen a movie where people are shipping off from England to go to France. They're mentioned. So all that chalk is just fossilization of forams. So that's kind of interesting to think about, that these protists are so important and meaningful that they can actually leave behind rock formations that are their fossils. So that's kind of cool. Radiolarans are also an example of cercozoans, which means that they have the thin pseudopodia. And you can see this is a radiolaran here, and you can see how it radiates like the sun with these extensions coming out of it, okay, in all directions. So that's where their name comes from, the radiolarans. All right, so then we've got the amoebozoans. And the amoebozoans are the ones that have the lobe-shaped pseudopodia, which means that they're thick, they're wide, and we break them up into different groups. The entamoebas are a group that causes dysentery, if you've ever heard of that disease before. It's a waterborne disease. That's basically the only thing that makes them stick out here in this chapter. Um, but the next groups are two of, if you're going to learn anything about protists, these are the two groups that you should know very well. The first of which are the slime molds, and the slime molds are really interesting organisms, and I'm going to post a couple of videos after I make these lectures to the website that will just show you the slime molds in action. For those of you who have watched the Planet Earth with the jungle, you'll be familiar with these videos. So plasmodial slime molds are one type of slime mold that can grow into a mass called a plasmodium. Keep in mind, this is not the plasmodium of the apicomplexans type that causes malaria. So plasmodial slime mold forms a plasmodium, which is like a supercell that has many nucleuses but no divisions. What that means is that when plasmodial slime molds are going through division, they create a new nucleus, but they don't go through cytokinesis. So it's kind of like a giant blob with many nuclei. And so that's kind of a cool thing to think about, that you've got, it really blurs the line of, what makes a cell a cell. If a cell is defined by an internal being able to keep the internal conditions different from the exterior, then it's one cell. But if a cell, especially a eukaryotic cell, is defined by the number of nuclei that it has, then it's sort of blurring that line there of what is a cell. So that's pretty cool. Cellular slime molds are another one that you should know about. And the reason why is because they are a way that we can see how did multicellular life first form. So what happens is when times are good, the cellular slime molds are all independent individual organisms. But when things start to get difficult, times get tough, there's stress, the cellular slime mold is going to come together and form not so much a colony, but a collection of cells that's working together. So that's pretty cool. Most of the time they're individual cells, but when things are going bad, they come together and form what appears to be like a multicellular life form. So again, plasmodial slime molds are sort of separating or blurring this barrier of what makes a cell, and cellular slime molds are sort of blurring this line between what is unicellular life and what is multicellular life. So this is just looking at the plasmodial slime mold's life cycle, and what you can see is that when it's a feeding plasmodium here, you've got one gigantic glob with many nuclei inside. And cellular slime molds, you've got them working individually here, but then when things get bad, it comes together to form this aggregated mass, which is a collection of these individual cellular slime molds coming together. And you can see this image down here showing you what a cellular slime mold looks like when it comes together. So that's pretty cool too. Alright, then we move on to the red and green algae. These are the closest relatives to plants. And remember that we said before, brown algae looks more like plants, but that's because of convergent evolution. Whereas this is supported, the fact that these two are the closest relatives are supported by DNA and molecular evidence. So red algae, why are they red? Well, if you've watched the Planet Earth on series on the deep ocean, as I think many of you have with me, you'll remember that red doesn't get very far down into the ocean. So if their pigment is red, it means they're absorbing all of the colors but red and reflecting red. So it doesn't matter that they're reflecting red light if it doesn't penetrate that far down into the ocean. So the deeper that you go, the more red these algae are. The closer to the surface of the water, the more green these algae are. So interestingly, red algae can also have green algae, meaning they look green, but taxonomically speaking, they are red algae. So the green algae are absolutely the closest relatives to plants. The reason why that we know they're closer to plants is because their chloroplasts are the most similar of all the protists towards them. Remember that many protists have different types of plastids, but the green algae are the ones that look most similar to those found in plants. Their DNA is also more similar to plants than any of the other protists. Why should you care about green algae? Well, they can be unicellular or multicellular, and they're really the most important component of phytoplankton. So we've looked at a few different protists that are important in phytoplankton's composition and important in those ecosystems, but far and away this is the most important of all those groups. Another cool thing is that these algae can live symbiotically with fungi to form lichens. So we're going to talk more about lichens when we look at or take a closer look at fungus here in a little while. You know, when we look at multicellularity, you know, a good part of it says that it's green algae. This is where it's at. This is how it happened. So there you go. Those are the different protists that you should know something about. And again, you're not going to be able to remember everything that's in the text, so hopefully I've highlighted a couple of things for you here to focus on. And yeah, so if you have any questions about anything from chapter 26 to 28 that we've posted to the website, feel free to send me an email, and hopefully you started looking at this with a lot of time on your hands.